So, welcome to the WFA podcast. This is hopefully going to be the first of many podcasts that you're going to see from the WFA. We'll be interviewing people within the WFA and we'll be interviewing people within Walking Football. My name is Ken. I'm one of the directors of WFA and I will be running this podcast whenever we do it. I imagine we'll be doing it probably once a month. Maybe more often if we think it's working and if we think people are liking it. Today on the podcast, there's going to be two people. One is Paul Carr, who is the Chief Executive of the WFA, and the other is Stuart Langworthy, who is also one of the directors of the WFA. He is the Director for Impairment, and he has many other roles within the WFA, including being the manager of the over-60s England team. So we will be interviewing both of those. They will be joining the podcast soon, and hopefully you'll enjoy what they have to say. Okay, so now we are joined by Paul Carr, who is the Chief Executive of the WFA. Hello, Paul.
Hi, Ken.
It's like satellite delay then. That's maybe there's going to be a bit of a delay as we chat, but we'll cope with that. We'll work that out. This is the first time we've done it, so there's going to be some problems.
Yeah.
So I've got a few questions I want to ask. I know the answers to some of these, but obviously our audience doesn't necessarily know the answers. So what I want to do is get your take on a few things, just let us know what you feel on these subjects and a bit about you and then a bit about Walking Football and a few other things. So I suppose the first question is, when did you first get involved in Walking Football? When did you first start playing Walking Football?
Yeah, it goes back to 2014. I was actually at university as a mature student at the time, and I saw it promoted on BBC Breakfast, and I thought that looks good. And went along to the nearest club, which happened to be Wigan Walkers, and started playing there. Took my cousin with me. We both loved it. We ended up playing 2 or 3 times a week, and that's how it all started, really. I mean, it's Wigan Walkers are still going strong. I visit them occasionally, but obviously I'm not living up north anymore. I'm now down in Norfolk, so I'm now playing with my local club in Norfolk.
All right, and when so the thing on BBC Breakfast, what exactly was it? Was it at some club, or was it just explaining what the game is? How did you sort of come to feel like it was something for you?
I think it was a feature showcasing Chesterfield. I think, which is obviously where it all started with John Crute, who created the sport, and it was one of the presenters just went there to have a look at it and showcased it really, and also I also saw the advert that Barclays did about the same time. And that was showcasing a much older group of players, which certainly got some exposure, but perhaps it didn't give the sport the right image in terms of age of participants. When I first went to Wigan, there were about 10 people going there. I think they've been going for about 6 months or so, and so it's obviously early days. But even in the two or 3 years that I was there, it grew quickly. And when I left Wigan, they had about 40 members, I think. So it was growing really quickly in those early days, as it still is.
And so when was that? What year was that?
That was 2014. 2014.
So
11 years ago.
So the game had been going for a few years since before then, obviously, if it sort of started in 2011. But I mean, was the club quite established, or you said there was only maybe a dozen players, 10 to a dozen players, but have they been playing long?
No, not long. No, less than a year. So I think 2011 was when it started, but it obviously took a while before it got any exposure at all. So I think probably 2013, 2014 was when more and more clubs started to get involved. There were some websites created to promote the sport as well. So it was in those early days, obviously, everything was all over the place, really. There were all sorts of different laws of the game, and no one knew what the rules were. So it was a bit chaotic, but it was good fun. Everyone was enjoying themselves, even with that, even with those problems.
Yeah, which is good. And I think, and did you just know straight away that this was something you wanted to be involved in long term, or was it at the time just about playing football and having a game?
Now I could see the benefits pretty quickly because of the type of people who were actually in the club. There were people who were suffering from depression and serious operations, etc., and cancers. So in those days, I wasn't aware of the dementia and Parkinson's side of things, but certainly there were people recovering from all sorts of impairments in those early days. I could see that was the way forward. And socially, my cousin had serious cancer, and he was loving it, going there twice a week, and it made him basically get out of bed, and it certainly improved his health. And fortunately, he's still with us now, still playing walking football at the age of, I think he's 75 now, having had serious cancer.
And so, how long after you started playing did you decide that you wanted to be more involved? Quickly, or did it take some time?
A couple of years. Basically, I was at university as a mature student in Manchester, studying football business and finance. And one of the modules was to actually look at strategic management for a minority sport. And at the time, I was enjoying walking football, so I chose walking football to look at. And I spent a couple of months investigating it, looking at what other small national governing bodies were doing, and met up with a few people outside of the Wigan group who were quite involved in the game, and between us we decided to set up the national governing body, the Walking Football Association. So that was in 2016, like 2 years after I started, and so there was just the two of us to start with. 2016, we met in a pub in Essex, had a long chat for about 5 hours, and I persuaded him that it was the way forward, and no one else was really doing it. The FA were not really involved. It was just independent clubs doing their own thing and going to tournaments, and the National Cup had just about started, I think, the year before. So I contacted the guy who did that National Cup, and he was the guy that I got together with to set up the association.
Oh, right, excellent. And you, so you mentioned the FA. So I'm going to bring up the laws of the game. So anybody watching this will be aware that there is more than one version of the laws of the game. There is our version of the laws of the game, the WFA's version, and then there's the FA's version. And I believe there's a UEFA version as well now. So there's potentially three versions floating around. They are primarily the same. I think you would agree that, it's the basics of the game are the same. But there are differences. And in your opinion, why do you think those differences exist?
I think we've gone down the route of keeping it as simple as possible. Bearing in mind the age of our participants and also the age of our referees. So we haven't really added significant changes over the years. I mean, we've asked the clubs every year, our member clubs every year, and also our referees to give us suggestions. But I certainly, over the last 2 years, I don't think we've really changed anything of any significance. Certainly this year we had no changes at all, other than some tidying up changes. So unfortunately the FA constantly like to tinker. I mean, they're tinkering in association football all the time with the offside and handball and everything. So they seem to desire a constant change, which just makes our differences even more each year. We were maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we weren't that far apart. But over the last few years, it has actually got worse. There are more differences now, unfortunately. Obviously, we've had meetings. It's still something that both parties say they want to achieve, some unification of those laws of the game. And who knows, it may happen in the next couple of years. But at the moment, it's not and it does causes confusion, doesn't it?
Somebody's playing the piano at your end, Paul, or is that your phone going off?
It's my phone, so you'll have to edit the phone out.
So
yeah.
you didn't think to turn your phone off before we started? Okay.
No, I didn't. That's stupid, isn't it?
I just thought
Never
somebody
mind.
was playing the piano behind you.
No, it's
Yes.
my
So
phone.
yeah,
So,
I mean, yeah. So I think there is this diversion. Is it a kind of a one or a couple of rules that are specifically different that I suppose, we at the WFA are kind of opposed to?
yes, I think the back pass rule. They seem to like the back pass rule, where you're limited as to how you can do back passes. Again, I think we generally view it's an added complication that is not necessary, because the referees have the power to stop any abuse. The other things are, it was contact until about 2 years ago. They were allowing minimal contact. Fortunately, that's been changed now, so they're now in line with us in terms of non-contact. They've recently added odd things like group penalties, which we don't necessarily agree with. It's a bit
Can you
unfair
explain
what
a group penalty is?
So I think it's 5, or in some cases 4 infringements, and the referee obviously has to add them all up. And as soon as it gets to 4 or 5 infringements, they'll give a penalty away. So what we've seen and heard is that many teams are losing matches purely based on infringements, on the number of infringements. So you might be losing on 2 or 3 penalties because your players have been committing too many fouls or running too much, which isn't really what the game's about. The game is supposed to be about playing decent walking football, and shouldn't really be decided on, in our view, decided based on who's committing the most fouls. And I don't know any other sport where that is the case. And for some reason the FA thought that was a good idea. I think they thought it was a way of stopping running. But our preferred route to stop running is to educate the players, educate the clubs, and get the referees to be stronger.
Yeah, and I think so. This, when you say it's a group penalty, this is fouls committed or any infringement committed throughout the team. It's not 4 players doing this. If one player doing it 4 times, it's any player on the team.
Yeah,
so
anybody. So somebody could come on. Someone could come on as a substitute, and within 10 seconds they could commit the 5th foul, and they'd be giving away a penalty, which I think is fundamentally unfair, really. And I feel sorry for that player.
Yeah. Okay. So, and obviously we have no intention of employing that rule going forward for the WFA.
Well, we don't as an association. Obviously, we will do whatever our member clubs wishes to do. If there's an overwhelming view that was a good idea, then obviously we'd consider it, and if the clubs wanted it, then we might want to trial it to see how it goes. But the feedback we're getting from the clubs who are playing in the FA tournaments is that it's not particularly popular, and it doesn't seem to be working in terms of stopping the running. There's just an awful lot of penalties being awarded, which is not really the ideal way of winning a match, is it?
No, definitely not a way of winning the match. I mean, I think the subject of running is I think something to tackle in another conversation. We've just published. Well, I mean, we're about to publish our most recent survey, which we did at the back end of last year, and there was a lot of conversation when we asked people questions about running and about how we stop it, and I think that's a big topic for the sport, which we need to cover, at another time rather than now. So no, it's good to get an oversight on the laws of the game. Another thing I'd like to ask is about the World Nations Cup. So in 2023, our sort of sister organisation, the Federation of International Walking Football Associations, ran the first ever World Cup World Nations Cup, I should correct myself, in St George's Park. I think the event I was there, so I can comment on it. I think the event was a great success. It had a few challenges. It was the first event of its type. We ran into a few challenges, but I think generally, I think it was well received by the countries. I think it was a great event. helped by the fact that England won in both the over 50s and over 60s. I think that was good. It was good for us. Maybe not great internationally. Probably would have been better if another country had won one of the age groups. But, we're a home nation, and we've probably been playing walking football longer than all the other nations that came. So it's not surprising that we won. But it was a great success. And there is another tournament in Spain this year. So it's the second World Nations Cup. So just, give us an update on that, how that's going, and in terms of teams, etc.
Yeah, I mean, the St George's Park event was fantastic, and we had a great gala dinner where all the clubs, all the nations had a fantastic evening after the tournament. And we had the finalists were from Czech Republic, which was a surprise, and from France, and we had semi-finalists from Italy and was it Canada? I can't remember who it was.
Canada, which was a real surprise. That Canada got into the semi-finals.
There were some interesting successes there, and obviously we had some interesting teams from Japan and Australia, etc. And we had, I think, in the end, it was 27 teams from 17 nations across the two age groups.
Right.
This one coming up in October in Spain has grown significantly in less than 2 years. We're now looking at 6 different categories, 3 men and 3 women. So we've added the 70s to the men, and we've done the women's 3 age groups, which is 40s, 50s, and 60s. So in total, at the moment, it's looking like 70 teams across all the groups, and over 30 nations. So it's a significant increase. We've got new nations like Morocco, Brazil, New Zealand, Netherlands. So it's covering pretty much every continent now, which is brilliant. Fortunately, I've really got some really good hosts who seem to know what they're doing. So although I'm overseeing it, I'm not as actively involved as I was in St George's Park. So our friends in Spain, the 2 Marks, are doing an excellent job in getting it all organised, organising hotels and transport. Referees, Nigel is involved in our referee selections. It would be a combination of Spanish-based referees, so that they're actually all English expats, and UK-based referees. But we because of the number of games, although it's over 2 weeks, we're going to need a good number of referees. Again, doing teams of 2, so they'll be working as teams of 2. And it'll be quite intense. Each tournament is 4 days, Tuesday to Friday, and then we have a weekend break, and we do the other 3 groups the next Tuesday. So I'll be there for 2 weeks. Hopefully you'll be there as well for certainly one of the weeks.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, we could do a podcast on there. That'd be quite good, wouldn't it? We could do one from the event, which I think would be quite good to do.
We could, and we could invite some of the overseas managers and players, I guess.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, we could maybe try and do do it where we actually all sit together in one room and do it that way. It's logistically slightly problematic, but I'm sure we can find a solution for that. I think what's nice about the what's nice about the list of clubs, how it's kind of grown, is to get a club from South America, particularly Brazil. So you get one of the nations that's traditionally the best at association football. We've got the Netherlands, who again are one of the top European countries when it comes to association football. So I think having those countries, I think, further kind of legitimizes walking football and legitimizes this tournament. Not that it wasn't legitimate the first time we did it, but we had certainly had quite a few, what I would say, lesser footballing nations in the last World Nations Cup, and now we've got a lot of the top nations in Europe and across the world, which I think is excellent. And it just shows how the game has grown. And I think it also shows how well received the first World Nations Cup was, and how the word of that has spread, and how people want to be involved.
Yeah, definitely. And in fact, with one exception, which was because we didn't invite them, all the nations that were at St George's Park are returning to the Spain tournament. So they clearly did enjoy it. And as you say, there were some teething problems, but nothing really serious. And obviously, we'll learn from them, and the Spanish hosts will learn from what happened in St George's Park as well. But we're all looking forward to it. We've got the draw coming up at the end of this month, Saturday the 31st of May, 30th of May.
Fantastic.
That's in Spain, so I'm going over there to do the draw. So yeah, it's coming around quite quickly.
Yeah, it might be good to. I'm just thinking maybe after the draw to get one of the marks onto this podcast and have a conversation with them. A kind of on the ground view of how things are going. I think that would be good to do. I think that'd be quite important.
Yeah.
I sort of got one question which has been pondering in my head. Is obviously this is going to be played outside. We're in Spain. I'm assuming they're all the pitches are outside, and I know it's in October. But are we at all concerned about the weather? I just remember the World Cup I think it was the American World Cup when the Irish team went bananas because it was too hot to play in Florida. So I suppose I'm just raising that as a point. Do we think it's going to be an issue?
It isn't, unless it's very unusual. But normally at that time of the year, the weather's really nice, quite pleasant, like early 20s, 21, 22, not much rain. Yeah. And, we're only going to play from up until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So there'll be plenty of recovery time each day. Good. We're not going to be quite as intense as we were in St George's Park because we're doing it over 4 days, so we got more time to do that. If it rains, then we'll play through. There's no problem in playing in the rain. The pitches are artificial, so no issue. And the weather down near Alicante is normally pretty nice towards the end of October, so it'll be ideal. It'll be nice to escape the cold, rainy weather in England.
Yeah. It will definitely be nice to do that. So no, it's excellent. Okay, well we'll have a further update on the World Nations Cup maybe later in the year and on a future podcast. I think my last question is the WFA is going to be 10 years old next year. Where do you see? So, firstly, how do you think that first 10 years has gone, and where do you think the sport is going the next 10 years?
I think it's gone way beyond what I could even dream of, really, at the time. I mean, I think when I started it, I had I suppose a long-term ambition that we would have England teams, that we would be a funded association, and that we would have lots of people working in the organisation, and we'd have growth of member clubs, etc., with a lot more people playing walking football. And that, with one exception, has happened. I think the one exception is that we're not a funded organisation yet, but everywhere else I think has gone really well. Everyone's gone well. We've got loads of England teams, we've got loads of clubs, lot of people playing, over 100,000 people playing walking football. Obviously that's not all down to us, but obviously we were a significant part of that growth. And we've got great volunteers like yourself and many others, and it's 10 years is in the life of a sport is quite short, and I think we've made fantastic strides in that period, really. In terms of where we're going, obviously continue all the good things that we've been doing. The growth in impairment with Parkinson's has been fantastic, and that will no doubt continue, and we're adding things like cancer and dementia, etc., to that, so that will no doubt continue. But I see the sport gradually going down the age groups. I mean, we've gone up to the 80s already. I think we're beginning to move down to the 40s in terms of the National Cup, and I see at some stage it will be played at schools and in universities. I think within the next 10 years that's going to happen. So basically anybody can play walking football, and hopefully in the forthcoming years everybody in every age group will be playing walking football.
No, that'd be amazing, and I think I think everybody'd like to see it grow. I think the not being funded is you're right, is a massive difficulty for us as a kind of completely volunteer run organisation, who are basically dependent on funding from sponsors and for the small amounts of money we can raise from national cups and affiliation. And I think it's been amazing that we've managed to do that for 10 years and still be going. And to be doing ventures like this. We're trying to promote the game and keep it going. So I think that's really good. That's really important. And it'd be great to see where we go in the next 10 years. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, Paul. I am going to be interviewing Stuart in a bit, and we'll be putting this all together as one episode, probably. Just for the audience out there who are watching, obviously Paul's video has frozen a few times while we've been chatting. I don't know whether he's on 1990s dial-up, but quite often your video's been freezing. I'm hoping it could be this system. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, you've gone a bit like an oil painting on a couple of occasions as you've blurred across the screen. But it's the first one, so we'll see how it goes, and we'll see how Stuart's look. So thank you very much, Paul. We will speak again, no doubt, and always nice to speak to you as always. And I will see you very soon.
How do I turn it off?
You don't. I'm just going to pause it, and then you'll disappear from that side of the screen. Okay, so I'm back. Paul's gone. So hopefully that was quite enjoyable. You hopefully enjoyed watching that. I don't know. You may have hated it. We'll see. But video quality on Paul's end wasn't amazing, but hopefully you could hear what he was saying, and that's the most important thing. So very shortly, I'm going to be joined by Stuart Langworthy, who is another director of the WFA, and I'll be talking to him, asking him a few questions. We'll try and put this all together as one episode, or it may be two. Until I finalize it all and look at it, I can't decide what we're going to do. So yes, I'll be back in a minute with Stuart. It's probably worth saying that if you're watching this and you would like to be on the podcast, if you've got something to say, if you've got something to tell us about your walking football story, then we'd love to hear it. We'd love to interview you on the podcast. We'd love to hear what you've got to say. And it can be about any topic. It doesn't have to be specifically about your club or your own experiences. It could be your thoughts on how the game is played. It could be your thoughts on the rules. It could be your thoughts on competitions, on refereeing. Basically anything that you want to talk about that we think will be of interest, or you think will be of interest to other people playing walking football. This is hopefully going to be an open forum where people can talk about walking football and not be worried that they are going to be criticised too much. I don't necessarily want it to be controversial, but I also don't want it to be a dull conversation between two people. I'd like this to be interesting and vibrant. So if you'd like to be able to do that, you just need to email me. That's Ken Davis at thewfa.co.uk, or use the generic media at thewfa.co.uk. Get in touch and we'll arrange something with you for a future episode. Okay, so I'm back, and I'm back with my next guest, who is Stuart Langworthy. He is another director of the WFA. Stuart is our impairment director. Is that your only title, Stuart, or is there other titles that I forgot?
I'm the over 60s England manager, and I'm the director for Grassroots.
Of course, you are Grassroots Director, yes.
Simon is our new impairment director, but I'm working closely with him.
Yes, of course, yes. Sorry, I do apologise. I should know that. Shouldn't have been doing this podcast. I should know who everybody is, but there you go. Yes, so Grassroots Director, yes. And England manager for the over 60s. And so I talked to Paul very briefly about the 2023 World Nations Cup and how that went. And really, I'd like to start with that because obviously you were right in the mix because you were one of the winning managers in the over 60s. So I suppose I'd like you to go back a bit to how you started in walking football and ended up as an England manager and winning the inaugural World Nations Cup.
Crikey. Okay, how long have you got?
Well, you can do it in chunks. You don't have to do it all in one go.
So I had a hip replacement in 2007, and I was still playing 11-a-side football at that time, and I was 47 years old. Following the replacement, I did try to come back and play 11-a-side football, but just realised I couldn't. And then at the age of 50, I discovered walking football. A team in a town local to me were playing. I was quite interested, so I thought I'd go along. Within a month, we were in a national final, and I was absolutely hooked because it's a game that I could play to a standard higher than I'd ever achieved playing 11-a-side football, and I was completely hooked. And my club in Gloucester is a community club, so I came back to the committee and said we need to get walking football started here at Abbeymead Rovers, and we did, and we've been going now for 10 years, and we have over 200 members. We have 5 sessions a week, including an incredibly successful impairment section, and that's how I got into walking football, really. And then one night, after too much red wine, I saw an advert for England manager required in the WFA newsletter.
Right.
And I just thought I'd have a go because, as I told my family, when am I ever going to get the chance to apply for an England job?
Yeah.
Ever again. So that was my sort of attitude. The 2 things that were required were a proven success in walking football and good with managing people. Now, my skills as a teacher, I think, stood me in good stead with the managing of people. And our little club, Abbeymead Rovers, had got through to a couple of national finals and won a few awards and things. So I just thought I'd have a go. I never expected to get any further than that. And in 2017, Paul Carr phoned me up when I was on a beach in Spain and said he'd like to offer me the role of England manager, having previously carried out a 2-hour interview for the role. So that's how I got the job, if you like. It's not really a job because it's not paid, but the role.
Yeah.
And I've absolutely loved it. When does a teacher in his early 50s get the opportunity to become England manager? How does that happen?
Yes. Doesn't.
That I take each day as a magical day because I cannot believe that this has happened to me. I have grabbed it with both hands. We did trials for the England team. We got a team together from all over the country, and in the last 7-8 years we've only lost 2 games, and we won the first European Nations Cup back in 2018, 2019, and we won the first World Nations Cup in 2023. So it's just been unbelievably good, successful. It's been a blast. We've made memories that none of us will ever forget, and it's something that it's way beyond a dream. I could never have dreamt this would have happened to me, and I'm just loving every minute of it.
No, that's brilliant. And do you think how does managing compare to playing? Obviously, you still play, but I'm assuming there's a lot more focus on. Now, you're obviously a director of the WFA as well, so you've got other duties on top of being the England manager. So does the managerial side of it compare to playing? Or, when you were watching the over 60s play, and would you rather have been on the pitch than being the manager?
I would love to play. The lads have been great. I mean, I've made a couple of cameo appearances when, in one game, I came on for 30 seconds at the end when we were 7-1 up,
Okay.
and there was no chance of losing. And I came on for another 30 seconds in another game when we'd won a tournament in France. So, I can say that I've played. In order for it to be credible, I would have had to have gone through the trials the same as everyone else. And I'm very, very keen to show that what we do is credible. So I can't go picking myself just because I'd like to. Of course, I would love to play more often, but I'm frankly just not good enough. I've had a few health and injury scares in the last few years since turning 60, when I thought I might have a reasonable chance, but you know, it's not to be. So I love the managerial side of it. I hate making difficult decisions, having to let people go from the squad, having to tell people that they're not in the World Cup squad is something that I wouldn't like to do, even if I was paid a huge sum of money. But being a volunteer and telling people who have, you know, put so much into this that they're not part of the World Cup squad is really tough. But you know, it's one of those things that you sign up for when you sign up for the role, I'm afraid. And you know, I get to stand there arm in arm with the team before matches and sing the national anthem, which I never thought I would get the chance to do. So alongside that goes having to make all the tough decisions. So yeah, I'd love to play, but frankly, not good enough.
So obviously, your side are the Walking Football World Champions after the World Nations Cup in 2023. And obviously, we've got the next World Nations Cup this year in Spain. How are you feeling about the squad? How are you feeling about your chances? How much are you looking forward to this tournament, which is going to be much bigger, much longer, potentially much more competitive? Other nations, you know, we've got the Netherlands, we've got Brazil, we've got some big footballing nations coming to this World Cup. Not that we didn't have them in the last World Nations Cup, but we certainly had some smaller nations in the, you know, with not necessarily association football pedigree, but certainly for this next one, that isn't the case. So how are you feeling about that?
Well, first of all, everyone wants to beat the world champions. You know, we're up there on a pedestal to be knocked off. When teams play us, they all try that extra little bit. They find that extra 10%. They may be going a little bit quicker. They may be tackling a little bit harder. But you know, everyone wants to beat us, and you know, we get that. The team gets that. But on the other side of that, we've only lost 2 games in 8 years. Half of the squad is new. So if you look at the squad for this World Cup compared to the last one, half of the squad are new. Some of them were in the over 50s last time and have turned 60. So we haven't got exactly the same squad. We've got a lot of new players. We've got a lot of younger players. But I've still got the nucleus of the team from last time as well, who've been there and done that. Some of whom are more mature in their years, but as we know, walking football is a great leveller, and just because you're a few years over the over 60s borderline, if you like, doesn't mean that you're any less of a player, and you've got a big squad. So you know, we're very confident. You know, teams are going to have to play incredibly well to beat us, or things are going to have to go incredibly badly on the day for us to lose. So we're confident, yes, but we know it is going to be tougher. We know that a lot of other teams and countries have taken huge strides forward. You just take Spain, for example, and it's a massive organisation over there now, and it's not all expats. You know, there's a lot of Spanish nationals playing. Brazil are going to be an unknown quantity. We know that Italy are always going to be strong.
Yeah.
And as you say, we've got the Netherlands and countries like that coming in. And you know, a little word for Jersey as well. I mean, we've had some of our most competitive games against Jersey, which a lot of people may not think, but we have done. So there are some very good sides out there, and they'll all be out to beat us. But we're confident. We're the reigning champions, and like I say, things are going to have to go very wrong for us to not be in there with a very, very good shout.
Yeah, and I think when I was talking to Paul earlier, you know, we're just talking about the surprise teams that we had in the later rounds of the last World Nations Cup. You know, we had Canada in the semi-finals, and I think We had Croatia was in the 60s final against you. Is that correct? Was it Croatia?
No, we played Canada in the semi-final.
Semi-finals, yeah.
Northern Ireland did well, and Northern Ireland were one of the teams that beat us recently. We put two teams out, so rather than picking, if you like, my strongest team from the squad, I put the whole squad out in two teams, and although we battered them in terms of possession and chances, they scored one and we didn't, and that's how walking football works sometimes. You know, if you've got a goalkeeper on top form and he's saving everything. We lost a game 1-0, which is only the second defeat we've had. Both defeats have been 1-0, and both times we have absolutely battered the opposition but failed to score. But, you know, it's difficult to score in walking football. There are going to be a lot of tight games. So you have to be patient, and you have to play your game, and you have to trust in what you do and the way you do it, and you have to trust in your players. So, but yeah, there were some surprise teams. Canada were certainly a surprise team.
Yeah, definitely.
And like I say, Jersey, Northern Ireland last time, they all did very well.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that is, I'm assuming there's going to be another dark horse team this time that we're not expecting, that is going to come up out of the pack and do better than we're anticipating. It'd be interesting because the draw is soon. So it'd be interesting to see, you know, what group England is in. And how they're going to fare. We're hopefully going to do, because obviously you're going to be there and Paul's going to be there and hopefully I'm going to be there too. We're hoping to do one of these from the World Nations Cup. It'd be quite nice to get the other managers on, get some of the players on. Might need some interpreters. I don't know how that's going to work. We'll sort of work that out. Most people can speak English, don't they? Because, you know, they just can. So hopefully it'll be fine, because I certainly cannot speak any other languages. I can speak Canadian.
Well, I think
Australian.
I think we'll have Dee Dee there to interpret for some of the Asian teams.
Yeah.
Ricky will be there because some of the African teams, Rwanda, for example, a lot of them only speak French.
Yeah.
So. It's funny. I can talk Canadian as well.
Yeah, it's easy. Yeah, it's really good. I'm really good at Canadian, Australian. I can do New Zealand. Yeah, I'm good at all of those languages. No, that's excellent. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be good. I wanted to ask another question about the squad, really, and this is, you know, you were saying that some of the players have come up from the over 50s squad. Is it difficult, do you think, for the people who are at, you know, 59 in the over 50s and automatically expect to walk into the over 60 squad once they get to 60? And I'm assuming that isn't necessarily the case.
No, when they turn 60, if they're interested in coming and joining our squad, they immediately come in on trial.
Right.
So not every person who has come and joined us has made it into my squad, because, as we know, football is all about opinion.
Yeah.
I run my squad differently to the way that the 50s run theirs, and that's not a criticism. That's just, we're different, and you know, people have got to fit in. People have got to fit into the way that you do it with the people that you've got. So there have been 2 or 3 that have come up but haven't made it into the squad for various reasons, and there are 4 or 5 that have come up and have made it into the squad. And of course, you've also got to look outside, because there are some very, very good walking footballers out there, and that's where the beauty of our regional competition comes in. Because I get to go and scout players at the regional tournament 3 times a year, and half of the squad have been picked up through the regional tournament as players that have stood out in that. So that's proof that is working as well.
Yeah.
So it's difficult, because I've always said to people, because I know what people say out there. They say it's a closed shop, you know, and you can't get in, but. I've got players who've invested an awful lot of time and money into being in this team, because it is a self-funded team. So my logic has always been, if I see a player who is as good as what I've got, then I will stick with what I've got, because I'm not in a position where all these players are highly paid for me to fiddle around with a squad and put someone in, try them out for 2 games and drop them. I'm not in that position.
Yeah.
So anyone who comes up has got to be better than what I've already got, or there needs to be a space. So I've been very lucky in that a number of people have perhaps realised that they're not first choice and have stepped away from it. That leaves me spaces. But I've also had to say to people, okay, I think we've got to a point now where you need to maybe consider the over 65s or the over 70s, depending on how old they are, because I've got younger and better players coming through. So it's tough, it's really tough, but I will only bring someone in if they're better than what I've got, and that's always been my logic, and that's not being a closed shop, because clearly half the squad now, more than half the squad, are actually new players, either from outside or come up from the 50s.
Yeah. And I think I just wanted to, I think it's really interesting. And I think, again, I think the people in the over 60s do have a slight pathway to, as you said, to the over 65s and then the over 70s. So obviously there has been talk about having an over 55s. I wasn't a massive fan of the over 65s. I feel the 5-year increments is too short, but I understand why we do it. I understand that it helps with the National Cup, but you do feel like we're going to have to end up with an over 55s because we've got a 65s. I feel like the 5-year chunks is probably going to be the standard at some point, especially as there's more players playing and there's more players in clubs. If they want to enter the National Cup, they didn't quite, they're 59. They're not getting in the over 50s, but they could be in the 55s. So
Yeah, maybe. I mean, there's no secret to the fact that the over 65s have really struggled to get games. There's been a number of occasions where countries have asked to play our over 60s.
Yeah.
And I've passed that fixture over to the 65s. I don't think there are many countries out there at all that have got over 65s.
No.
So they end up by playing over 60s teams from other countries and actually do very, very well. But I think you're right. I don't think it's been easy for the over 65s for that reason. Yes, we've got an over 75s, and we're advertising for an over 80s manager as well soon.
Wow.
But I think those sort of increments are more likely to be more favourable as you get older.
Yeah.
So I think that people in their late 50s, I know that there's a number of players who are 58, 59 who are still in the 50s who are still very, very fit and still very, very competitive.
Yeah.
And I've got 2 guys in my over 60s who are actually now over 70. But my logic has always been, if they're good enough, it doesn't matter how old they are.
No.
They're good enough.
Exactly.
And until someone better comes along, then they're still going to be in the squad.
Yeah. No, I agree. I was going to pivot to a different topic, but I'm just looking at how long we've been running so far. We're probably getting close to an hour by the time I edit this, which is surprising. I thought we'd done in 20 minutes with both you and Paul.
Well, we could just carry on talking.
Well, exactly. So I wanted to talk about the impairment a bit more, and maybe how walking football is, really changing people's lives. But I think that's a much bigger topic. I don't want to cram it in the next 5 minutes. So I suppose the last thing I'd want to ask is, and it's sort of related to the England job, but also related to your, now I remember that you're Grassroots Director. How are those two roles? Are those roles a bit weird, because you're at one end, you're dealing with startup clubs, you're dealing with the very sort of bottom rung of people wanting to play walking football, maybe playing it for the first time, and then you're dealing with the sort of best players, in theory, best players in England who are playing in the in England squad. Do those two things ever come in conflict with each other?
No, I don't think so. I think that they complement each other, because, as Grassroots, we're doing the Grassroots Awards every year, which celebrates the people who are achieving fantastic things and giving of their time. It involves the National Cup, which is incredibly successful, and obviously the better players and the better teams get to the finals of that. It includes the Super League, which is the regional tournament. So again, that's about giving good players the opportunity to impress and maybe trial for England. And yes, it does involve the very bottom of the grassroots, getting new clubs started. But, you know, I love doing that. I mean, I love telling people about walking football and the health and welfare benefits of, the health and well-being benefits of walking football. And starting up new clubs is so rewarding. And just to touch on that impairment, you know, I consider myself to be incredibly lucky. I get to see the two extremes of walking football. I get to stand there with the World Cup and say that I'm a world champion, and stand there with the England team singing the national anthem, which is, like I said, beyond a dream. But every week I'm with my Abbeymead Rovers impairment group, the Pirates, with an 83-year-old who can hardly walk, with a 40-year-old woman with a prosthetic leg, 5 guys with Parkinson's. And that walking football session is changing their lives, and it's creating a fantastic family and a community. And I get as much pleasure from being there with them. And I always come off the pitch with my belly aching with laughter with that lot.
Yeah, brilliant.
And I get as much pleasure out of doing that and helping other clubs to start up sessions like that as I do linking arms and singing the national anthem. It's a different kind of pride, but both things are incredibly rewarding and incredibly humbling, and I love them both.
No, that's fantastic. And yeah, I think, you know, I'm sure we'll be chatting to you again on this, and I'm sure people find out a lot of the other things you do, because you do a huge amount. And I know we've tried to keep giving you other roles to do, but I think you've just not got enough headspace and / time to be able to do other things. No, it's been fantastic, that, Stuart. Thank you very much. I will wrap up now. It's been really good talking to you. Hopefully this has been a success, and if you're watching this and you've enjoyed it, then that's great. If you've watched it and think, what are these two old farts doing, then that's completely different kettle. And don't tell us if that's what you're thinking. Just don't tell us. Just keep that to yourself.
If people are thinking that, they can come on here and have a go and try and do better.
Okay,
which
exactly.
Is what we want, really,
just keep that opinion to yourselves. Brilliant. Thank you, Stuart. If you, I'm going to do a little wrap up after you've gone. So if you want to dive in and hit the leave button, which is on the bottom somewhere, and I'm sure I'll speak to you very soon.
Yeah, I can see that.
All right. Okay, so that was the first episode of the WFA podcast. We need to give it a name. I'm going to give it a name. I don't know what I'm going to call it. It'll be at the front of this first podcast, the name with a title and a screen that says, hey, this is the whatever. So yeah, this was episode 1. It's way longer than I thought it was going to be. By the time I've edited it, it's going to be 50 minutes. So if you've watched the whole thing and you've stuck with it to the end, congratulations. Hopefully it was interesting. And yeah, we would love to hear some comments. We'd love to hear what you liked about it, what you didn't like about it, whether you thought it was interesting. And if you want to be on it, contact us. We'll do these as often as we can. And yeah, hope you've enjoyed it. See you all soon on the next one.